Shalom and welcome to this edition of Rebuilding the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Carl Gallups today. Carl is the senior pastor of Hickory Hammock Baptist Church in Milton, Florida since 1987. An Amazon top 60 best-selling author and a conservative talk radio host, heard nationally and internationally since 2002. He's also a prolific TV, radio, and print media guest commentator and a former decorated police law enforcement officer. In 2016, Carl was appointed by Sheriff Joe Arpaio as a special deputy with the Maricopa County, Arizona Sheriff's Office. Carl is the founder of the Internet PNN News and Ministry Network, www.ppsimmons.com, and a member of the Board of Regents at the University of Mobile in Mobile, Alabama. He's a graduate of the Florida Police Training Academy, Florida State University, and the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, where he received his master's in divinity. Carl was featured on Fox News May 2016 and called one of America's most influential evangelical leaders, along with Dr. Robert Jeffress and Dr. Jerry Falwell. Carl was also asked by Donald Trump campaign to open the Trump for President rally, 15,000 attendance in Pensacola, Florida. The author of the new and very, very exciting book, Gods and Thrones, the subtitle, Nechash, Forgotten Prophecy and the Return of the Elohim. Carl Gallups, welcome to the Carl Gallups Hour.
Thank you, Rabbi Eric. It's just, I cannot describe to you what a joy it is. First of all, for you to be in my life, to be my friend and my brother, but second of all, to at least once a month spend this time together. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, and actually thank you for setting up my interview with Mike Kerr that happened last Thursday.
Good.
And we're getting thousands of hits and building a relationship. I understand you're going to be part of his Dallas conference coming up in June, I believe.
Yes. No, it's coming up in March. Just a handful of weeks away.
Coming up in March. Large prophecy conference being held there. He does several a year. And I said, hey, count me in. I said, whatever you got to do, get me with my friends, because prior to this was Derek Gilbert. We have
Tom Horn.
We've had Tom Horn, Josh Peck, and then to balance everybody out, we just signed Dr. Michael Heiser as a regular contributor, who I have immense respect for.
Me too. Me too.
He thinks that he's like me and you. We're kind of straight down the middle, but there's some edgy stuff going on, and he's a literal, clear meaning.
Yes.
But The Unseen Realm was, I thought, one of the finest books that I've ever had the opportunity of really opening my mind to.
I agree. Listen, Dr. Heiser, let me just say this about him. He's been on my radio program. We're both connected with Defender Publishing and Dr. Tom Horn. I have never met him personally, but I feel like I know him. I've read his books. I respect him tremendously. He's a brilliant
yes.
Theologian, researcher, language expert, a brilliant mind. There are several fine points of how he sees the scripture that I do not agree with him, but he could be right and I could be wrong,
right.
Number one. Number two, even if it's the other way around, it doesn't matter, because he loves the Lord. He loves God's word. I do. You do. I'm sure you and I don't agree on every fine point, but this is what the scripture speaks of when it speaks of brothers in the Lord, who dwell together in peace, who love the Lord, who love his word together, who search the word together with no guile about it. Our only desire, your only desire, Dr. Michael Heiser's only desire is just to bring as much truth as we believe God's showing us to God's people in these prophetic days. I think Dr. Michael Heiser is an amazing man of God, and I'm so glad he's connected with your ministry now.
He is. There was a man who wrote a book, you and I have talked about this before, Rapture, case closed. You and I agree that it is a pre-wrath, not pre-tribulation or not tied to the tribulation, but tied to the wrath of God. And Nelson Walters, I don't know if you've ever talked to Nelson, wrote a book called Rapture, Case Closed, question mark, and he went through 147 passages of scriptures to show us exactly where the timing is, and he's coming out with a new book. He's an interesting character. I had him on twice because the first time I couldn't get him. The comment is that about 80% of the body of Christ disagrees on when the rapture will occur.
That's correct.
And if 80% disagree and nobody is preparing of that 80%, then everybody's so enamored with themselves that they all think that they're right, that none are willing to accept the fact that what about the probability? There's a 4-to-1 chance I'm wrong.
Right.
What am I doing? What am I doing to prepare for that?
And that's where I have always stood, and I have always been, and you have too. And I'm not playing the little fiddle of pity, but I've always been ostracized for that, and you know, and attacked because I wouldn't get in a hard camp and just say that if you don't believe this, you know, you don't understand the Word of God. No, I mean, I'm passionate about what I believe. You and I both are. We both believe that we scripturally, contextually, passionately see this more of a pre-wrath, post-tribulation kind of rapture scenario. But look, good gracious, look at the scholars of the past, the ancient Jews who were looking for the prophecies of Messiah. Look what they missed. Look what the Pharisees missed. Look what the Sadducees missed, with Jesus standing right in front of them working miracles in their face, and they still missed it. So
my goodness, 40 days and 40 nights, a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of cloud, a pillar of fire by night, and they're arguing in the corner.
Yes.
Okay, over the most ridiculous things, because we have this inflated image of ourselves. Oh dear, Jesus, if you would just come down right now.
Yes, I know.
I promise you that in less than 5 minutes I will check my iPhone.
I know. Yeah. Well, me too. Oh, yeah, brother. And just wait till this video goes all over YouTube and everything. Yeah, I know. But brother, look, here, I continually tell people, especially people that are in a camp and they're very hard about it. I don't mind someone being firmly in a camp, and fervently in a camp, and passionately in a camp. Just don't exclude the rest of the family of God. Don't be ugly. Don't be, excoriating people because they don't see it your way. And I've tried to just appeal to what you and I are speaking of, the scriptural examples from our own faith history, from the Orthodox Jews right on through to the born-again Christians, the Jews that became Christians, and all of the missing of the prophecies as they were unfolding in front of them. So look, Brother Eric, Rabbi Eric, you and I, we're repeating ourselves, but you and I agree on this, that we believe we see more of a post-tribulation, pre-wrath kind of rapture. I'm pretty passionate about what I believe, and I can defend it, I think, very well, which I have discovered is probably why I'm never asked to debate people who stand in a camp where they just insist that they're right and everybody else is wrong. I've begged to have discussions. They want to call it debates, and they refuse to do so. So, but the point is, my attitude is, I'm willing to be wrong. Because I don't want to be the Pharisee. I don't want to be the Sadducee. I don't want to be the idiot that had it right in front of my face and missed it.
Exactly. I posted the Mike Kerr interview. I promised Mike I would put it out to get him some coverage. He's in that little town in Idaho. He's, trying to build his audience, and he's done a fabulous job, and we had a great time together. And I got a response back that says, what don't you understand about the words Jesus said, call no man rabbi?
Yeah. Oh, God.
And I've had, it was a day that I had my physical, so I had my last old man's pneumonia shot. You get that at 66.
Yes.
So I got that. I had blood drawn, went through the physical and stuff like that, and saw this posting, and I wrote, What don't you understand about first century Judaism as to why Jesus would say such a thing?
Exactly.
What don't you understand about him saying, call no man master?
Yes.
Okay? He wasn't saying don't call anybody teacher. My goodness, he referred to himself and was called. He said, you call me rabbi and teacher, and you're right. Okay? Listen, I'm not calling myself master.
Right.
Okay? My vocation, my calling is as a teacher.
Right.
And so I went to and got my ordination as a rabbi, as a teacher, so that I would be licensed to teach.
Right.
I said, it sounds to me like you need to go back and revisit first century Judaism to understand why Jesus would say such a thing.
Thank you. Context means everything, doesn't it, brother? Especially linguistic context. And you're so right. I mean, what Jesus was saying, and just to tag on to what you said, is that he was saying, do not call anyone the holder of all truth, because Jesus was saying, I am the holder of all truth. I am the truth. Do not call someone the master of all knowledge.
Right.
Because that's what basically the Pharisees, by the time Jesus was there, that was the position they had put themselves in. They would take a scripture like keep the Sabbath holy, and they would build thousands of laws around it, or rules around it, and declare that those rules were now law, and that they had direct connection to the mind of God, and they knew all things, and they were the teachers and the rabbis, and Jesus excoriated them. He says, by keeping to your traditions, you're nullifying the true word of God. Then he turns to the crowd and says, don't call any mere man the possessor of all of God's mind. And that's basically the context. Am I right? I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me.
No, you are absolutely right, is that we hold the understanding, and it's your job to pursue understanding, and it is a target that you can never achieve. You can never know the answer, and the best answer is, I don't know.
Right.
All right? And those willing to stand in the pulpit and say, you know what, that's a great question. I get asked this question all the time. The Bible says that all of Israel will be saved. I said, that's correct. I say, how? I don't know.
Right.
Well, when God says all of Israel, is that past, present, and future? I don't know.
Right. Right.
Well, how could he possibly do it? I don't know.
Yeah. How can he save somebody like Eric and Carl?
Right.
I don't know. Just his grace, his mercy, his power.
Right. But the point is, he says he's going to do it, and that's good enough for me.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. I have a list by my bed of questions I want to ask God.
Yeah.
All right? Like, what do I say to you when you sneeze? If we're creating God's image, he must sneeze, we sneeze. So what do I say to God when he sneezes?
God bless you, you can't say that.
Right. So bless yourself. I mean, these are things.
That's funny. Oh, goodness.
We're looking at some activity in Israel. I have, I don't know if you have the app, Red Alert, on your phone. I highly suggest you get it. Make sure you turn the volume down. Of course, they're 8-hour time difference. But every time there's a rocket launched into Israel, it sends an alert. It tells you where it is and a link to the location and whether or not there are people involved or just property.
I do not have that, Rabbi Eric, but I'm very familiar with it. Yes, I have enough beeps going off on my cell phone, but I know it's horrific, and people that do have it say that it just blows them away, to no pun intended, to see the amount of rockets coming in. Yeah.
So Israel has responded now to Iran's presence in Syria.
Yes.
And the question that I wanted to ask you, because I'm a person that looks at Ezekiel 38, and I see God saying there are 4 prerequisites before Gog Magog, this battle, can take place. And the 4 prerequisites that I see that he's saying that have to be in place is that one is that you'll come into the land of those brought back from the sword and gathered from many people on the mountains of Israel, which have long been desolate. They were brought out of the nations, and now all of them dwell safely, as being a reference in my mind to the sovereignty Israel being sovereign over a land that God promised, and that land was defined in Genesis 15. So I would consider that to be precedent one. Number two, that they will live in unwalled villages. Well, we don't have that in Israel today. We actually have walled villages, and we have walls on the border of Israel. And this implies a time when Israel will be secure, all right, and it says, and they will be at peace with their neighbors. So we have Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, northern Saudi Arabia, northern Egypt are within the confines of the biblically mandated Israel. All right? And then the fourth prerequisite is that you will have so much wealth that the world will want to plunder your silver and gold. Now we know that this can be sometimes applied to oil and gas, and we look at the oil and gas reserves, and yes, we are now setting up some of these prerequisites. My question to you and the discussion I'd like to have today, because I think this is paramount in a lot of people's minds about what's going on in the Middle East, which Western media just, they'd rather show a North Korean giving a stuffed animal or the Olympic stuffed animal than talk to you about an Israeli plane being shot down and an Iranian drone and Iran's presence in Syria alongside of Russia. And so I believe we have the responsibility to shed light into these areas, because this is what you and I watch.
Yes.
This is where our eyes are focused. So the question is, one, do you view Ezekiel 38 as listing certain requirements that have to take place in order to set the stage? As we've talked about before, you don't put on a play, an opening night, the stage is already set.
Yes.
Okay, that's
yes.
the end of the process. The beginning of the process is building the sets, writing the screenplay, casting the actors, people playing their parts. Is Ezekiel 38 of here's the parts that everybody has to play in order for Ezekiel 39 to come to pass and then this battle to unfold?
Yes.
That would be my first question to you. Do you see any of that shaping up, or is this just in that general category of just another event that's leading us closer to the setting of the stage as we see the players of Turkey, Syria, Iran, Russia, Israel, all involved and engaged at various levels?
Okay.
Are we moving closer?
Well, let me just say yes and yes. I think the answer is yes to both of your questions, but let me just back up. Let me first give a philosophical, theological, general context to it, and then let me move it right into today's headlines. Okay. And then I'll give you my best unction of what I believe we are seeing happening, okay? First of all, as we were talking about rapture timing, I always try to be, now I'm not a fence, neither are you. We just try to be genuinely humble about approaching prophecy. Right. Unless an angel of the Lord or the Lord himself appears in my bedroom tonight and says, thus shall it be, make sure you tell the people, I'm going to go by the word of God and the spiritual illumination that God gives me and us. And I bounce it off my dear brothers in the Lord that have the same spirit. And right. I think that's how we arrive at discerning the times in which we're living. So I think a couple of examples of this would be appropriate here. And again, I'm just speaking philosophically and theologically for a moment, then I'll get specific. We go all the way back to the scriptures of the prophecies of the coming of the Messiah. And so you had some that said, well, when he comes, he'll come out of Bethlehem. You had other prophecies that said, well, God's going to call his son out of Egypt. You had other prophecies that said, well, he'll come from Nazareth, that area. You had other prophecies saying, well, he'll come along the shores of Galilee. You had other prophecies saying he'll come by the way of the Jordan River. All right, so which one was it? And so they debated. They debated and they debated, and as it turned out, it was all of them. But you could have never known it until it unfolded step by step by step. And even as it was unfolding step by step, most of them missed it. And then it was at the end of it, when the conglomeration was seen, that now theologians, we act like, oh, we knew that all along. Yeah, it was true. It had to happen this way. Well, but they didn't know it all along. They argued about it continually, which is one of the reasons why the wise men stopped in Jerusalem and inquired at the temple and of Herod, where is the Christ going to be born? I mean, if they're so wise, why didn't they know? Because there were so many opinions and so many scriptural hints. And so the theologians, the priests that were surrounding them that day, they agreed upon, well, Bethlehem is probably the best bet.
Right.
Okay, so now let's move to the return of Israel. Dozens of scriptures that speak of the return of Israel. All of them written during a time when there was no Israel, or as prophecies even before they were in Israel. For example, Genesis, Exodus, Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy. There are prophecies in Deuteronomy spoken out of the mouth of Moses before they ever set foot in the promised land about the whole history and future of Israel, including their scattering to the nations and their ultimate return in the last days. It's all in the book of Deuteronomy.
And including Jesus coming. One will come after me like me. So he even said Jesus is going to come.
Exactly. So, hold on, let me turn my phone down. So, the point being, you have all of these prophecies about the return of Israel. Now, I challenge your audience, go back and look at the commentaries that were written before 1948. You will be hard-pressed to find a scholar who believed that there would be a literal physical return of a geographical nation called Israel in the Promised Land prior to the actual second coming of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And they reasoned it by the context of the historical little slices of time in which they were living. They're little 60, 70, 80, 90 years. And we do that, brother. We're really bad about that. And by the way, I'm going to get to your question in a moment, but this is important context.
It is.
Because what happened was most of the commentaries would say, listen, this is impossible. There can never be a nation called Israel. The world won't allow it. The powers that be, the political powers, the prevailing evil in the Middle East, the fighting between the Arabs and the Jews, and of course a lot of them wrote during the time when there were very few Jews in the land. You know, they didn't start coming back to the 1800s and early 1900s, and even then just in little scatterings and smatterings until finally it kind of erupted in 1948 or 47 with the Balfour Declaration in 1948. But the point being, Brother Eric, is that all of those scholars were wrong. It did come back. Jews are coming back to the land by the millions. It is a nuclear superpower, the nuclear superpower in the Middle East, one of the top nuclear superpowers of the world. It is strong. It can take care of itself. And of course, God's hand. The nations are aligning against them. All of the prophecies are centered around. Listen, our entire news cycle since 1948 and before has been almost always centered on the Middle East as it relates to Israel. So the point being, now we look at today's unfolding. You and I would be remiss if we didn't study it, if we didn't look at it, if we didn't compare it to the scriptures, if we didn't make some kind of biblical, educated, theological guesses as to what might be happening.
Right. We
would be remiss. There are people that mock us for doing this, but I say this is a biblical command upon God's pastors, preachers. So now, having said all of that as context, saying that what I'm getting ready to say, I could be wrong, but I look at what's unfolding, and I think, yes, there are prerequisites. How we interpret them, even those are open to matters of disagreement and interpretation and nuances, just like where will Jesus be born, you know, and we see it, nuances in the scripture, and sometimes we think, okay, it's gotta be this way, but as it turns out, no, it doesn't gotta be that way. God's working something bigger that we can't quite see right here in 2018. But the truth of it's in the Word. And when it unfolds and when it comes together, we will go, if we're still here, we will go, oh, that, I get it now. It plugs in just, I didn't see that. Okay. But what I ask your audience to consider, and this is what I say anytime this question is asked, how can what we are watching not be somehow connected, at least as the edges of the building process of those passages in Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Psalm 83 and all? I mean, there's this coming together of the nations. You've got a geographically returned Israel. Could they sometime soon in our lifetime or in the next week enlarge their borders? I mean, through war or whatever, through an aggressive act that takes place against them and they respond? Yes, that certainly could happen. Could it be Persia, which is Iran? Oh my gosh, that's one of the first nations listed in Ezekiel 38, along with Gog and Magog. And there's debate about what that is. Is it Russia? Is it Turkey? Is it a conglomeration? Is it a conglomeration of northern empires and the Stan nations and all of those people? But we know that whatever entity that turns out to be, just like Jesus, where's he going to be born? But whatever entity that turns out to be, and I happen to think Turkey's going to play a huge role in being a part of that entity. But whatever it turns out to be, it ultimately forms this alliance with Persia, Iran. Well, brother, as you know, and you see this, I'm not, you and I have talked about this a lot off air, but look what Iran is doing with Russia. Look what Russia's doing with China. Look what they're doing with North Korea. Look what Iran's doing with North Korea. Look what Turkey's doing with Syria, with Russia. Look what Russia's doing with Syria. Look what Iran is doing with Syria and Hezbollah and Lebanon. And oh my gosh, and here's Israel sitting right there, and now Jerusalem has been declared to be the capital and the home of the U.S. Embassy, the largest Christian nation on the planet, the largest superpower the world has ever seen, has just said Jerusalem's the capital. And Israel has said, we receive that in the love of Jesus. You know, so, I mean, brother, so anyway, I took a long time to answer your question, and I apologize, but I think that we are looking at least at the precursors, the building to this eventual Ezekiel 38, 39. Can it implode or explode in our lifetime? It may very well, but I'm like you. I think there's still some other things that need to build and other things that need to happen. But I think we're living in an extremely prophetic time, and even Orthodox rabbis in Israel are on record in the last year saying the same thing we're saying. Of course, they don't put this Jesus emphasis on it because they have denied him as the Messiah, but they see everything else we see except for that Jesus is Messiah. So that's my short answer, brother.
Well, and I agree with you. I actually had Nathan DeVere, who is the professor of Jewish Studies at the University of Utah, on, who just finished a global trip to look for the lost of Israel. And he's identified in a new book called The Lost Tribes of Israel, Yesterday and Today, a new book finding hundreds of Jewish communities in sub-Saharan Africa. He's estimated that of the 14 million known Jews, he has postulated that there's a 14 million unknown Jews, that the real sum total is closer back to the 28 million, all right, going back to the pre-1939 number that we existed, and that once they're recognized that there will be this influx into Israel because their identities will be verified. Now, he's gone on this very large outing with large university funding to do this. I had him on the program, not a believer, had him on the program because I wanted to know what the significance was, and he said, we have found these pockets where, you know, you would think they were speaking Swahili, but they're talking Hebrew, and they're celebrating Shabbat, and they're wearing tallits, and they're wearing kippahs, and they live a Jewish lifestyle. And they say, well, where's the missionary? Like, you know, you go into sub-Saharan Africa and you find that they have a mission and a Catholic well, because here's the missionary family that started the Catholic Church here in this town. They say, well, who is it? Who came here from Israel, or who was the missionary? Oh, well, we've never had a missionary. We've always done it. And they show them pictures from hundreds of years ago, and drawings from hundreds of years ago, and scrolls from hundreds of years ago. And they say, how many communities are there? They say there's countless of these pockets of communities. And why now? See, your question, my question is always, all these things have existed, but why now are we beginning to see them? Why now are they surfacing? What's the significance? It could have no significance at all.
Right.
But if it has some significance, and the Jewish population is twice the size that we've expected it to be, and God says He's going to call His remnant back, well, when you and I calculate 2/3 are going to be lost, 2/3 of the Jewish population are going to be lost, we're thinking in the 14 million range. 2/3 of that leaves a very, very small number. But if our numbers are actually 28 or 30 million and growing, and you now have this larger community and God brings them back, what impact's that going to be? What's that going to change the dynamics of the region? And where are you going to put them? You're going to have to put them in Judea and Samaria, because there's not enough room for another 14 million, not enough room for the 8 million Jews that are there, let alone 14 million more Jews. And then what pressure is that going to put on Jordan into what their position is going to be? We see this battle going on between the leadership of Fatah and Hezbollah and Hamas, and whether or not the old PLO is actually going to survive. Then today was supposed to be the day in the fake news that the Netanyahu scandal was to break, and he was stepping down.
Yes.
And he got on record and said, it's just not true. It's just a complete total lie.
Yes.
And it's 12:33, so it's 8:33 p.m. I have not seen a headline yet that says Benjamin Netanyahu taken away in shackles and arrested for these. So, so much going on in the region, so much happening, and the fun part is trying to, it's this puzzle. And you and I have the outer edge, and we have some of the center pieces, but we have this whole big area in the middle, okay, which are all the unfulfilled prophecies. And we have this pile of pieces that are the unfulfilled prophecies. And now we're trying to see if we can, hey, what if we forget about this whole picture over here? Let's see if we can connect any of these pieces. Okay, now we have 2 or 3 of these pieces connected, but we don't know where they fit.
Exactly. Which is brilliant analysis. By the way, that's fascinating to me about the possibility of 14 million more Jews. I was just teaching my people last night on another topic, and I'm not going to get all into it, but I happened to mention in context that there were only about 14 million Jews in the entire planet. So this is exciting new information that we can research and share with our folks. But anyway, no, you're right, which is why I continually beg our brothers and sisters in the Lord that are preaching and teaching to please be humble about this. I mean, be passionate, of course. I mean, I love it when I can't stand a fence walker. Well, it might be this, it might be that. I'm not going to say. Well, I will say, and you will say, it might be this, it might be that, but let me tell you what I think. And then eventually we say, but I could be wrong, and I'm open to contextual correction.
Absolutely.
Because of all the illustrations I've already given, all the illustrations you just gave, and the fact that it cannot be denied, we are living in the most unprecedentedly prophetic time since the first coming of Jesus Christ. And so, I mean, the return of Israel, the return of Jerusalem, the implosion of the Middle East, Turkey collapsing into an Ottoman empire. I mean, Iran, Russia, North Korea, China's first military base outside of China, and on and on and on, collapsing borders, millions of refugees flooding into the European Union, into America. I mean, this is stuff of prophecy it cannot be denied the technological explosion, the filth, the demonic outpouring that's upon us, and getting worse. Even the people that are inventing the technologies are now afraid of it, and they're saying we've opened Pandora's box. This is all prophetic, brother. And so these are the times in which we're living. Now, as you said, we've got the outside edges.
Right.
We've got some of the centerpieces that we've already snapped together, but we don't know exactly where in that center it fits yet. So you and I think, are doing our due diligence to point to the outside frame, to point to the inside pieces that have come together, and then to be humble and honest enough to say, but we don't have the whole picture yet about any of this. But how can we deny God is moving? He's working.
You know, what's so fascinating is that it started with you, and you've helped me build some new friendships. And when I was on with Derek Gilbert, we were talking about the march around Jericho and how they used to do the crop march, and this was to a god. And I said, boy, that sure reminds me of the modern day crop circle. And he just kind of stopped and he said, I've never equated the two. I said, so could there be a remnant of those who still serve this false god, who still are practicing some of these practices, and that's where crop circles come from? And he's going, I don't know, but I got to look into that, because it would be logical. Okay, it might have nothing to do with it. It could be imitators. Okay, it could be old followers. We're finding people who follow old writings and old teachings, and they're digging through since the modern press has come out, and they're finding philosophies and go, well, this one works for me, I'm going to start practicing. That was the Jim Jones kind of thing. That's where these odd cults come from, as they begin to follow different manifestos. But the beauty of the relationship is that, first of all, I don't have to be right. I don't really care about being right. What I care about is the truth of God's Word.
Yes. And
2,000 prophecies about have been fulfilled. So if they've been fulfilled exactly as God said that they were going to be fulfilled, then I look at what's left. What's left to be fulfilled? What's playing out in my lifetime?
Right.
And what may play out after. It may all be seen in my lifetime. I'm 66. I'm a fig tree blossomed, 1952. Fig tree blossomed in 48. If I am a literal believer in the fig tree prophecy that this generation will not pass away until they see the great day of the coming of the Lord. Well, is that defined as the great day of the coming of the Lord? Is that defined as the tribulation? Is that defined as the day of the Lord? Is that defined as the coming of the Messiah? You know, I could talk to
some would define it as the rapture in a different scenario than how we define it. So yeah, I mean there's several possibilities. Yeah.
Sure.
And yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were finished there. So go ahead with your thought, brother. I'm sorry.
I was. It's just so exciting because we don't know.
Yes.
But because we don't know and we have such a hunger to know, we keep digging.
Yes.
And we keep digging, and we keep digging, and that's when we're going to find that nugget. And one nugget is going to lead us to a vein, and we're going to find new discoveries much faster.
Yes. And I think it's also important for your audience to remember, too, as we're discussing these things, that it's like the coming of Messiah, the first coming of Messiah. I mean, as you and I have discussed, the very first prophecy of that's back in the Garden of Eden, in Genesis 3. But then there are thousands of years of fulfillment of things moving in that direction. But think of it, brother, in those thousands of years, I mean, how many generations? If you take a complete generation from birth to death of that whole generation, we're talking about 100 years. I mean, hardly anybody's left after 100 years, of a singular generation. But is it 70? Is it 80? Is it 100? Bottom line, let's just agree that after 100 years, there's maybe 5 people left on the face of the planet from that generation.
Right. My mother's 91 and a half.
Yeah.
Right. And she says all I do is 3 days a week I go to funerals.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that's
all- that-
right.
you know,
Bless
all-
her heart. Bless her heart. And that's the truth of it. The point I'm making is from Genesis 3, then of course we had the flood and everything, but from there to the angels declaring to the shepherds in the field outside of Bethlehem, thousands of years. And so if if you break it down into 100-year complete generations, you're still talking, 20 of those 100-year generations. And none of those people saw the fulfillment. But think of it. Even the shepherds might not have seen the fulfillment of it. They saw him born. But what if they were 50 or 60, 70 years old when they saw it? He didn't start his ministry for 30 years later, you see. And then even while he was in the midst of his ministry, people who were looking for the fulfillment, they died. They never saw him go to Calvary or rise from the grave. They were not there when the church was born and the 40 days on the face of the earth. You understand what I'm saying? So we measure everything through our little 60, 70, 80, 90 years if we're blessed. And just because we don't see some big explosion of final fulfillment of prophecy, we think, well, maybe it's not really happening, or maybe we've missed it. Or no, if God declares a thing, Rabbi Eric, as you know, if God declares it, it is going to happen. And it's going to move forward whether we see it, whether we acknowledge it, whether we like it or not. It is going to move forward. And sometimes it transverses several generations before it explodes into its fulfillment. So, so we look at the Middle East. We look at everything that's happening today in today's headline news. And, and I'm saying, how can this not somehow play thickly into biblical prophecy? At the same time, I don't declare this is that next week the Ezekiel 38-39 war will break out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not prepared to declare that, but I am prepared to declare, oh my gosh, I think I'm watching. I think I'm living in the days of Ezekiel 38 and 39 beginning to take shape right before our eyes.
No question. What's interesting is for so many years they designated north of Jerusalem as Moscow.
Yeah.
That was.
But it's not.
It's not.
No.
It's Ankara. It's Turkey.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you have to go through Turkey to get to Russia.
The North Pole. And to get to the North Pole, if you draw a line from Jerusalem to the North Pole, it goes right through Ankara.
So, I went along with the traditional teaching because I had teachers and I was new and I was young in the Lord and I never looked. And then I reached the point where I was finally challenged to say, why do you not, what do you not understand about study to show yourself approved?
Right.
You've now been given the tools, and I've sat under some great, and I want to call them, I am not a scholar. I'm a teacher, okay? I am not a scholar. I don't devote myself to the scholarly works. I'm a teacher, and I take the aggregate of things I learned from Carl Gallups and things I learned from Derek Gilbert, and I compile them together, and they are presented differently than Carl directly presents it, and differently than Derek, but it's not of my creation, it's of my consolidation, which I consider makes me a teacher, not a scholar. A scholar goes out and discovers and then puts it together in a scholarly fashion. Some refer to me as a scholar. Thank you very much. I self-define as rabbi teacher. And you go to school and they use different books and different materials, and I'm very selective in this series that I have called Revealing the Bible, which is every day from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. We take the Bible in both English and Hebrew and we break it down to exactly what God is saying using God's vocabulary and God's dictionary. And I think we're at Genesis maybe 1:26, and we're in the 8th week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to take it all the way through. Well, this is a scholarly endeavor to teach people who have never been taught big E Elohim, small e Elohim, never even heard of the concept never heard of let us. First of all, let there be light is the exact same committee decision of the council that said, let us create man in our image. The statement, let us, is the final declaration after a collaboration that says, okay, let us proceed. Okay? Let us move forward with it. Here's the plan. Let us move forward. And that is the let us of the Bible. It is the council of heaven coming together, the triune nature, the compound unity of God. And then are there others at play? Not the angels. They weren't created in the image of God, but the last time I checked, there was a pretty mouthy team with a whole lot of opinions, kind of like the congregation you lead and the congregation I led. All right? I might have been the leader, but I sure got a whole lot of input from a whole lot of people, solicited and unsolicited. But the final authority, the final decision was by the board, all right, which said, let us proceed in this direction. Let us proceed. So it brings to mind, if we're created in the image of God and we are in His likeness and we operate with many of His attributes, how do these things come to pass? So this study has been an amazing study in the inerrant Word of God as it was given, not adding to or taking away, which makes it so much more illuminating, because you're not adding the Calvins or the I think I told you I got a call that they wanted me to do a feature on the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. And
yes.
I said I would love to do it, but what was it? And they said, what do you mean, what was it? I said, you want me to do a 500th anniversary of this event, but what was the Reformation? And they said, is this Reverend Eric Walker? And I said, it is. And they said, well, this was the breaking away from the Catholic Church, and this was the Reformation. This is created Protestantism. And aren't you a Protestant? I said, no, I'm a Jew. And they said, well, then you don't know anything about this. I said, no, and you want me to give a whole lot of credit to a guy named Martin Luther, right? And they said, yeah. I said, well, Adolf Hitler gave him a lot of credit. Maybe I'm not the right guy to host the show.
That's great.
I come from a whole different perspective. I didn't break away from Catholicism. Catholicism broke away from me.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not the guy to host your show. Right?
What'd they say?
And they said, listen, we'll send you the information. And I actually did a 1-hour special with a representative from and I asked them questions so that I could understand. I said, because as a little kid, when I would drive by a Lutheran church, I thought Lex Luthor. That was the arch rival of Superman.
Yes.
But we're not taught ecumenically as Jews to understand other religions. And other religions are not taught to understand Jews. And what's so interesting is that the body of Messiah is grafted into and is a branch of Judaism,
right,
and yet rejects it wholeheartedly, and apparently have read Ezekiel, but only up to the last 7 chapters, and then after that they've lost interest, because the entire millennial reign is outlined in great detail in those last 7 chapters, but they figured, well, if it's not in the New Testament, it doesn't apply.
Right.
And we're not going to be here anyways to see it. Well, I don't know that. I don't have a card that can get out of anything free. Then I'm asked the question all the time, am I one of the 144,000? And I say, I don't meet the requirement. They say, well, you're Jewish and you're a believer. That meets the requirement. I said, no, you got to read in the Bible who those 144,000 born-again Jews are. All right? And they say, well, you might make it through the whole thing. I said, well, praise God if I do. And I'll write books about it. But by then, Amazon's going to be gone. We'll still do the program, but there's not going to be anybody to watch. But we just don't understand the life and times we live in.
Yeah, this is why I love you so much, brother. I can sit and listen to you all day long.
Listen, I do have one last thing to run by you. It has nothing to do with any of this.
Okay.
But as a pastor over a church, and this is it's like a public personal proclamation. Okay. I want to spare my daughter having to deal with funeral arrangements. She's my only. I have a elderly mother, and I have two sisters very far away, not a close family. And so I want to be biblically buried, which means that I want to go directly from the hospital into a hole. I don't want a cemetery. I don't want a vault. I don't want a funeral service. I want to be wrapped in a cloth, and I want to be placed in the ground, according to the Bible, right? So an unlined. And so I called all through the state of Alabama, and I talked to all the authorities, and they said, certainly, any church and any private family that has zoned properly can do it exactly the way you want it. So I've been out looking for a church that's got an open spot and would do it. And I just got a letter back from a church that said, we'd love to do it, but we put a vault in because we don't want the grave to collapse.
Yes.
And I say, but I want the grave to collapse. I want to go back to the dust of the earth. As a matter of fact, I'd be fine going in vertical. I don't have to be horizontal. I know where I'm going. It's not about, it's dust to the earth. I was made, dust to the earth will return. I just want to do it biblically. Right. I have had the hardest time finding anybody that says that they'll do what's called, it's defined as a direct burial. And so I've called the funeral homes, and just to talk to them, they want $4,000. I'm trying to spare my baby girl from having to drive over from Atlanta to deal in a city she doesn't know to do this. Have you heard of any of this?
I've heard of it, but in all my years pastoring, I don't know that I've seen anyone to practice it because, it's a cultural thing. It's just not tradition in our area.
Right.
It's funny, though, when you said being buried straight up, I was thinking, man, we could bury you with some post hole diggers.
Seriously.
That wouldn't be hard at all.
Right.
Just make it a little larger.
Right. And all I want is a little sign that says, good luck in your new location. I'm not looking for a headstone.
Right, but I can just say, listen, I know that the church that I pastor, we do have a cemetery that was attached to it many, many years ago. We're blessed. We have 60 acres of property, and the vast majority of it is not cemetery.
Right.
But and we have buildings on it and facilities, and we do big, huge events for our whole region on it, and fellowship events. But anyway, I know that. Some cemeteries in Florida require a vault,
right.
And they do.
Yeah. Right. All regulated cemeteries in Alabama require one.
Yeah, and it's because of the ground sinkage.
Right.
Yeah, and now our cemetery, I've never had anyone ask about a direct burial, so I've never had to research it. I don't know what Florida law is. Some states have different laws about burial. And you've made me think about that. I'm going to check. But I know our own cemetery, we do tell people they do not have to have a vault, okay? Because it's a privately owned cemetery.
Well,
and then we go back and fill in after it begins to sink.
Well, hey, maybe what I'll do is I've talked to the coroner. They'll release me to an Uber driver, and I may say, hey, take me right over to Carl Gallups Church. All right.
Come on, I'll have a big set of post hole diggers ready, brother.
That's it. I honestly, I don't care. It's just, I'm not here.
That's right.
It's dust to the earth I was made, dust to the earth I return.
I know
we got off on that subject, but it's one for people to consider that if you want a biblical burial, all you are is wrapped in a shroud and dropped in the ground.
Right.
Okay? And we've gotten so far away from an environmental and what happened in the thousands of years that they did it that way, that we should come to this point where we figured out a better way. But isn't that the way we handle the Bible? We've been talking to Dr. Carl Gallups, our very, very good friend, author of Gods and Thrones, Nachash, Forgotten Prophecy, and the Return of the Elohim. Honest dialogue between two friends, covering a wide variety of topics. But one of the things that we are committed to doing is to revealing the truth. And sometimes revealing the truth means we don't know exactly what it is, but we have a lot of key indicators that lead us to believe this way or that way. But whatever you believe, as long as you believe that Jesus died for your sins and that he rose again on the third day, and now he's sitting at the right hand of the Father interceding for you, and because he lives, you can live. If you believe in your heart and confess with your lips that Jesus is Lord, you can be saved. That we agree on. That we say is the right way. That's the only time you're going to hear me say there's only one way, the right way, and that's the way. Thank you, Carl Gallups, for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next month. God bless you.
Thank you, Rabbi Eric. Me as well. God bless you as well, brother. Thank you.
Shalom, shalom. All right, and that brings to an end our live broadcast day. And we will join you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time for our next live broadcast. But we will rebroadcast all of these episodes all day long, and then they'll appear on our YouTube channel and over on our WNDTV feed. Until we see you back here tomorrow on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, or here, there, or anywhere we run into you, we wish you and bid you shalom.